So if you're an agency and you're thinking about having PPC services provided by a third party, one of the choices you're often faced with is, who do I choose? Do I choose a contractor or a freelancer, or do I choose an organisation that specialises in providing white label services? Because the two things are different, and you'll get different outcomes depending what's right for your agency and how you go about it. So let's look at some of the differences between those two approaches. There's no right answer, both have their place, but they're different, and it's important you know that when you're making the choice, so you choose the right thing for your business. So let's start with availability. A contractor is usually an individual. So that means that when that individual is busy, they are busy. You may or may not be able to add clients to them as their capacity gets used up. Because typically a contractor will work with multiple partners, they may have their own clients as well, so there's a bit of a push and a pull and a tension between the work you need to scale and the work they need to keep themselves busy. A white label agency service provider, by comparison, is built to be scalable. So you shouldn't have the same challenge. A white label service provider should always, under most circumstances, have the capacity to take your extra clients on as you increase their workload. Also, let's consider reliability. A contractor or a freelancer, whichever term you prefer, is usually one person. That one person needs to take a holiday. They may be out sick. They may have a family emergency or a technical issue where either their internet connection fails or their laptop fails or whatever it might be. You're dependent on a single point of failure in that one person. Again, a white label agency, by comparison, should have resilience built in. They should have holiday cover, they should have sickness cover. There shouldn't ever be a single person or a single piece of technology on which your business is dependent. So from a reliability perspective, when people have holidays, which they of course do, you shouldn't see a difference in your service level. Another difference that you'll find is in context. A contractor, by definition, will work with a small number of clients because they're one person. So they might find they have 20 clients, they might have 50 clients, they might have 70 clients. But it's a small portfolio of clients. And that means that most likely, that in any given market, they've maybe got a handful of clients in that area. So that means that their expertise and their knowledge of that market is relatively limited. If you compare that to a white label provider with scale, they may have dozens or even hundreds of clients in the same sector, so they know what works and they know what's better and they know how to get great client outcomes. It's usually a case of they can start nearer the place of success than a contractor can because they've got more experience. So that's one of the differences between the two. You also find that a contractor has one perspective, which is their own. They've got their own view of what a good campaign build looks at. In pay-per-click management, in Google AdWords and in Facebook, campaign build and management processes matter. They make a difference. They're how you get the results your client wants. A contractor will often just have their perspective. If they're smart, they'll be networking, they'll be liaising with other people. But in which case, if they're liaising with other people, you need to make sure that you've got good non-disclosure agreements in place so they're not showing your campaigns to other third parties to get extra perspective on them. Particularly if an account isn't performing, it's really hard if you're one person by yourself and you've exhausted all your normal ideas. It's pretty difficult to come up with new ones to make it better. A white label agency shouldn't have that problem. They should have quality control processes in place. They should have extra eyes who can provide perspective on the campaign that they're running for you. So if there is a hitch, another pair or 3 or 4 more pairs of eyes can take a look at that campaign internally within the confines of the organisation to get the right outcome for you. Now, if that sounds a little one-sided, it isn't. Contractors, if price is critical, a contractor will be a cheaper resource for you, almost certainly. There are places in the world you can go to right now where you can get contractors very inexpensively. There may be some language hurdles, but you can get a contractor very, very cheap to do your AdWords work. So a white label organisation will typically have infrastructure, they will have staff costs, they will have overhead, which as an individual contractor won't have. So a contractor will tend to be slightly cheaper. If price is the most important thing to you, you might find you save yourself some money there. But don't forget, it's only good if you can keep that client relationship for the long term. There's no point saving in the short term to lose a client in the long, whereby paying a little more you may have had a longer client relationship. Another thing to think about is service levels. White label agencies tend to have pretty well defined service levels because they have to. They have to know how to plan and prioritise their resource. So they know that they plan that if you send them an email, they'll maybe get back to it the same day or next day, depending on what the agreement is. A contractor typically won't have that, so when they're not busy, you'll get a response really quickly. When they're busy, you might not. When they're in the office, you will. When they're out of the office, again, you might not. Another thing to think about is tools. A contractor may expect you to provide the tools. They may be just providing the service. And everyone's going to vary, so we could cut this answer a dozen different ways and get a dozen different outcomes. But think about who's providing the tools of the trade, who's providing the call tracking, the reporting platform, the pay-per-click management suite. Who is providing that? Who picks up the cost of it? Because you might find quite quickly that your costs start to increase if you're having to provide those for your contractor. A white label agency should have that handled. You should not have to put your hand in your pocket for any additional costs or tools over and above the service fee they're already charging you. And the final thing to think about is scaling. The way you scale with a white label relationship, with a contractor relationship is different. So let's say, look at contractor first. Let's say that you fill them up, they now reach capacity. The way you scale is you hire another contractor. When you hire another contractor, they may have different ways of working to the first one. They may do things differently, their turnarounds may be different, their performance may be different. So you scale by adding more people, more contractors into the process. And as you do that, it introduces variability. Be prepared to experience different qualities of relationships and different qualities of outcome. It's, as they say, a bit like kissing a frog. You know, you may have to kiss several frogs to find the prince. And that's just the reality of working with contractors. If you're working with a white label agency and a service provider for your pay-per-click, you should just be able to keep adding clients. The process, the relationship should remain consistent. So scaling is often easier that way because you have consistency of process and experience and relationship. So there's some major differences between the two. There isn't a right or wrong. It's whatever's right for your agency and your stage in growth. And your needs may change over time. You may find you start with one and you change to the other. Hope that helps.